You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars and Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars and the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I'm Jake Hatch, host of Locked On Cougars. That, across from me digitally, is Chris Level, host of Locked On Texas Tech. Thank you once again for making both of these fine podcasts your first listen of the day, and thank you to all of you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Chris Level, I think that we have two programs here that have gotten a lot of what you'd call hate. I call it sports hate. It may not be true hate, but nonetheless, Texas Tech and BYU have been very capable of flashing the cash this offseason and have gotten a lot of attention from it. Is it a good thing for these two programs to be you see in the rundown, the programas non grata of the Big 12?
Jake, I've thought a lot about BYU and I think like Texas Tech and BYU when they play, it could be a great, rivalry or there's some spirited competition there, obviously. But I thought that for several weeks now that these are two programs, and I'm talking programs, athletic departments, however you want to phrase it, because it's not just football or just basketball. It's kind of all of it. That you've been a disruptor in this space. You have created buzz. Some like it, a lot don't. A lot are rooting for you. Many more are rooting against you. And people in this league, people in the surrounding communities, or from a college standpoint, right? I think though this has been good for the Big 12. Because I think somebody needed to emerge. Now, again, these programs need to go make some noise on the field and the product on the field and the win column and all that must, whether that's championships or cracking the code to get into the playoff or the Final Four. I don't know, however you want to phrase that. But it's been – because I don't know if you feel this, but I'm going to guess that you do. But I feel like that – I know that Texas Tech is, I guess the right way to ruffled feathers. There's SEC folks being quoted anonymously, like general managers. They're upsetting the whole market and the NIL, and you get people like keep my name out of your mouth. But I think in a way it's this has been a good thing for the league. And I'm just wondering if these are two programs, and I'm not saying somebody else can't join the party, but it just seems like this offseason to this point, these two programs have generated the most buzz for all kinds of reasons. But it's because you're supposed to be good, and it's because you're playing the NIL game.
Well, okay, and here's the thing about this is BYU is a religiously affiliated university, Chris, and the biggest thing that's happened with BYU is a lot of people have kind of shoved it in their face that you're supposed to be more pious, you're supposed to be upholding the standards you espouse to, and the response from BYU fans to those who are trying to essentially throw BYU to the wolves and get after them, as you mentioned, BYU's ruffling feathers, that's very clear they've done that, is that BYU for years, and I had conversations with multiple coaches of multiple sports at BYU who said, Jake, I know for a fact that other programs around the country are using bagmen and are slipping money under the table to athletes that we would like to have in Provo, but we will not play that game. We are not allowed to play that game at BYU. NIL has completely revolutionized that, where it brings it above board. And now that BYU is on a level playing field, now level's obviously a relative term, and it's not a playoff your last name, obviously. It's more of the fact that BYU now has their boosters who are capable of making a difference for BYU on the recruiting front. They're bringing that cash, and they have absolutely upset some of the equilibrium that some of these programs that think that BYU's beneath them, using air quotes, to make them feel unsettled or upset. And I think Texas Tech's done the exact same thing. Provo and Lubbock are not necessarily destination cities in this conference, but is also a league that doesn't necessarily have those premier cities in it. But I think the bigger thing is you look at these two, some would consider smaller programs in the Big 12. They've got multi-billion-dollar boosters who are willing to flash the cash to bring in talent. Guess what? It's exactly what the Big 12 needs. As you mentioned, they're going to have to prove it on the field, but they already have got that flash right now. The fact that they have brought attention to the Big 12 and to the individual universities.
Well, and Jake, true or false, you have heard numbers thrown around as it relates to BYU or an athlete or a team's payroll that are inaccurate. True or false?
True. And that regards to both BYU and other universities.
Yeah, I have found it quite humorous. All of the numbers, and I heard Texas Tech is paying this guy. I've gotten the biggest kick out of it because these people don't know but you've created this perception, this buzz, this and you're right. Now it's okay. Now it's all out in the open, and you're totally allowed to play by the current state of rules until the things are to change and whatnot. And you're trying to take advantage. What's the problem? I've often said, better to love and lost, okay, than never loved at all, right? So you're trying. I mean, you are trying, legally trying.
Well, okay, and that's the other thing about this, Chris, and I want your perspective on this. I have had multiple people tell me that work in, I call it the industry, but like people that know about numbers and what's being thrown around and whatnot. I know for a fact that there are agents out there that when they have a client, a player that's in the transfer portal, whether it's basketball or football, they will insert BYU into the reports of teams that are interested in them because they know that BYU brings a connotation that, oh boy, that's going to cost us extra money if BYU's actually involved here. Is it the same way for Texas Tech?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the agents aren't stupid. I think, and I think part of the reputation that I think both of these institutions have gotten has come from agents, because if you are doing good business, you do what you say you're going to do, you pay on time, you pay what you say you're going to pay. There's no, hey man, we'll get it to you in a month from now, or hey man, just hold on. Well, I mean, there's been none of that. I don't think with either one of these two places. And I think that goes a long way with the agents in the space. And therefore, you know, when you have a good reputation with those folks and people that are representing athletes and prospects and portal guys, whatever, I think it is a huge benefit to you as long as the rules stay this way. So yes, it's like MLB when you're talking, you know, like you always want the Yankees mentioned with your client. Now this is obviously to a much lesser extent, but the same premise is true. You know, Scott Boras was famous for that. Like he just always get the Yankees or the Dodgers now, I guess it would be. Yeah. But yes, that is indeed accurate. And I don't know if you agree with this, but I don't know if we are public enemy number one or public enemy number two or whatever the case may be. But part of me wonders if there's many rooting against you within your own league. Or part of me wonders if there's a lot of jealousy from other fan bases going, man, I wish we could do that. I wish we could operate this way. And
that right there.
Yeah. And maybe people are rooting for you because it's like, see, if we just spend a little, or we cultivate this donor to give to this, you know, this deal, we could all win. I mean, I don't know. It's a fascinating buzz that has been created, and it's kind of it runs the gamut. I think because there's when BYU is mentioned, people feel something. Yes. When Texas Tech is mentioned, people feel something, and I think it's kind of different for everybody depending on what your angle is. But like when people mention UCF, nobody feels anything. When people mention, you know, there's a variety of schools that would fill that void. That it's like, okay, you know, like. But there's not any polarizing feeling that comes with it. And I think that's important for this league, that these two institutions, when they're mentioned, you feel a certain way, and it's making people feel a certain way, one way or the other.
Well, and okay, let me also insert there. I think it comes down to envy, Chris. That's the thing about this. You have a bunch of programs out there who their fan bases would like to think that their programs or their university could do what Texas Tech and what BYU are doing right now. And yes, it comes out as them trying to essentially downgrade or just straight out hate on these two universities. But deep down, It's all about envy. And that is the difference, I think, in all of this.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with a lot of that. Although there's people that will love to point and laugh if you fail with what you've tried to do. There's clearly some of that. What is
Utah?
Yeah, no doubt. What would you, without getting into too many details, don't give anything away here, but what would you guess is a ballpark for what you think your football program's payroll would be?
Well, so if you include the rev share,
which we need to. We need to include that.
So that's a $20 million base right there to start. I would say BYU with the rev share included, I'd say they're sitting somewhere between 30 and 35 million. And that's remember, Texas, like it was breaking news when they said Texas was going to spend $40 million on their football roster. Well, they forget the fact that revenue share was a big chunk of that. But that's the going rate right now. And BYU, I can tell you, the boosters at BYU, what they're trying to do is they want to see BYU compete at the highest level, and they want to be one of the premier programs in the Big 12. Now, on the other side of this, Chris, I've got a really interesting quote from a former BYU AD who said it on my radio show here in Salt Lake City. So I'm totally cool to pass this along. I think it applies to both of these programs, and it actually it's something that you should aspire to have from other programs in the Big 12. And we'll get to that next on this crossover edition of Locked On Cougars and Locked On Texas Tech. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys to have fun in whatever you're interested in when it comes to the sports betting space. With the NBA playoffs in full swing, every night is delivering highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And the best part is whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout play, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than with our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and even during the action. Player props, performance trends, and even same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big along the way with FanDuel. The best part is, what would it look like to combine all of your live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds, put them together into a parlay, and win even bigger than you thought possible? And how could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? It's as simple as that. So get started today. New to FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Simple as that. Once again, FanDuel.com, first $5 bet. If it wins, you get that $200, no questions asked. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Texas Tech and Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I am Jake Hatch. He is Chris Level. Now, Chris, Rondo Fehlberg was the AD for BYU in the mid to late 1990s, and he is still here in Utah. Actually, funny enough, did a lot of the work he did before becoming a college administrator in the state of Texas, funny enough. It's just kind of one of those unique connections. But when he came to BYU, he came in an era when BYU was the dominant force in both the WAC and then in the transition over to the Mountain West Conference. And he came on my radio show when the transition happened that Tom Holmoe announced that he was going to retire. We had Rondo on to talk about what the AD at BYU has to do. And he made a very interesting comment. And he said that BYU wants to be, and he called him the big dog. That's the quote he used, the big dog. But he said the thing BYU will never do, at least in his opinion, is say that they are the big dog. They're not going to themselves go out there and pound their chest and say, we're the big dog of the Big 12 conference. He said, the way you want it to happen is you want the other schools in the league. He said this happened in the WAC, this happened in the Mountain West, that they understood, whether they said it or not, that BYU was that proverbial big dog out there. And I think that's exactly what BYU and Texas Tech should aspire to, is to have the other 14 teams in this league, whether they say it outright or not, acknowledge that these are the two dominant forces in the conference.
Yeah, this was because Texas gets a lot of credit for things maybe that they're doing now that they did not do in the Big 12 conference. Oh, this was Oklahoma's league in football. They ran this league in football for a decade, okay? The championships prove it. Yeah, there were some sprinkled in examples, and then we've had this one stretch where there's two different teams playing for the conference championship in the last 3 to 5 years and whatnot. In basketball, this was Kansas's league. I mean, they won the conference, and yeah, Texas Tech shared a title one year, and there's a sprinkling of some, but mainly it was you had to go through Kansas. And I think right now we're seeing what Houston has been able to do in basketball and what they did last year. Right now, it's their league, okay? And they don't have to say a word. Everybody would go, yeah, your conference record would suggest you. So, but I don't know if anybody from a football standpoint, like, 3 years ago, and then as the league has kind of changed and added different members, there's really nobody that's just been, and you look at the Vegas over-under win totals, and I think there's 8 teams that either 8.5 or 7.5. Okay, right. So like it's a jumbled up mess. Point being is that and it's going to be difficult for you to earn enough respect because you can't just do it one year. You got to do it consistently, and you got to win championships, plural. But you're right. I think at this point, there's a lot of people pointing to Provo and to Lubbock right now going, whether it's facilities, whether it's NIL, whether it's buzz created, whether it's, they signed this guy or they're, however you don't want to spin the wheel and pick your topic here that you've created the buzz on, it absolutely is the way that I think you would want to be talked about in many ways. Again, you've got to go produce and it's got to show up. And, I would say that's why, like, one of the biggest games on Texas Tech's schedule this year is when BYU comes to Lubbock. I just think that these two teams will be predicted to do big things in the fall. Again, in basketball, can't wait to see when these two teams match up. But you're kind of the needle movers in this league right now. You are, Colorado was maybe last year, but I think a lot of that goes away with some of the folks that graduated on that program. Yes, Dion's still there, but they haven't had a lot of buzz this offseason, not like BYU and Texas Tech have. So I don't even know who else I would put in this category. It's clear that these two are way out in front based on what we're talking about here.
Now they're making headlines right now, but as you point out, if you want the lasting or you want the staying power, guess what? The flash is what you're doing with the money and everything, what you're doing in NIL. And you mentioned the facilities. Grant McCaslin, you guys just announced he's getting an extension. I am fully expecting a reworked deal for Kevin Young coming really, really soon from BYU to make sure that he is locked in for the long haul here in Provo, even though he's just 1 year into a 7-year deal. The bigger point is, if you want to, as Rondo Feldberg suggested, be that big dog, okay, you've made the inroads in terms of people talking about you right now. What's going to make it last is if you can back it up. You're talking the talk right now. Now you got to walk the walk. And you mentioned the fact that BYU and Texas Tech are scheduled to meet in November. That feels like, on paper, as you mentioned, one of the more pivotal games on BYU and Texas Tech's schedule, because quite honestly, with those over-under win totals and how jumbled they think this league might be, whoever wins that game may have the inside track at going to Arlington.
Yeah, the conference race is likely going to be decided by one game. I mean, Texas Tech, you know what kind of year you had last year, and we're on the outside looking in. Texas Tech needed one more conference win, and they make it to Arlington, and they beat both of the teams that played for the title. Mm-hmm. And so the margins are going to be razor thin, but it's going to take these teams doing that and producing and cracking the code and getting to Arlington and winning it and all that to, I think, justify a lot of this conversation. But it's again, I've enjoyed the feather ruffling that has been done here, just because this is somewhat new around here. I think it's probably new for you too. You're in a different league. It's a different time. Your donors are stepping up and they're playing the game, and it's created a lot of hope, a lot of expectations. There's a lot of pressure. Yeah. I think all the above. And I think that's a good thing, though. It's better than being somebody that, we'll see what they do. Who cares if they're good or bad? There's no it just would be terrible existence to be in. Like, I think a lot of the Big 12 is right now, when there's just zero buzz about some of those programs. But I think the buzz you've created has really helped the league in many ways.
Well, and that's the hope, is that BYU can have some staying power here, because I know Brian Santiago, who was just installed as the new athletic director at BYU, I was at his press conference, and he said afterwards, we need to be a force in this league, for lack of a better term. And he said he understands there's pressure. He said nobody's going to be underrating BYU going forward. They're gone are the days of being picked 13th out of 16 teams in the football poll. Gone are being, I think they were 11th in the basketball poll. That is not a thing anymore. If BYU's outside the top 5 in either one of those preseason polls, somebody screwed up big time, it feels like, or something crazy happened. But that's the thing. You've got to embrace the pressure, but then you also have to produce. And that is, I think, going to be the ultimate tell for both of these schools in this league, is that either they're going to continue to make the haters hate on them more because they're winning, or the haters are going to have the final say and laugh at you because you fell flat on your face.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't the last year's preseason football poll is still wild to me. That'll go down as an all-timer compared to how it when the reality of what actually happened versus what everybody thought a year ago at this time.
Correct.
Crazy sports, man. It's like you can't predict it, you can't figure it out. But you're right.
We watched a team go from 16 to 1. Here's the thing. We'll probably be in this league. I don't know how long BYU or Texas Tech will be in this.
Will never happen again.
Literally, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah, never happen again.
Now, we've talked a lot about money, Chris, and there is one particular name, and he's a Texas Tech guy who is making headlines both at the football level, but also like political level, like national politics. Who is Cody Campbell, and why is he so important to the Big 12's future? We'll talk about that as we continue on right here on Locked On Texas Tech and Locked On Cougars. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars and Locked On Texas Tech your first listen of the day. I know, Chris, that you have your Locked On Texas Tech Insiders group. I have the Locked On Cougars Insider group. Would encourage, if you have not signed up for either one, whether you're a Texas Tech Raider fan or you're a Cougar fan, join today. Get the inside scoop on all things Texas Tech and BYU from our various Insiders group. The great thing is you can click the link in the show notes below and sign up. 14-day free trial.
What is yours called? What's your group called?
It's a Locked On Cougars Insider group. Simple as that.
Ours is the Matador Mob. Yeah.
I need to rebrand that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Matador Mob. We do a Matador Mob mailbag every Friday and only take questions for people that are in the group there.
I do the exact same thing. So there you go.
Okay, there you go. So Jake, Cody is a guy that I've known for 20 years. Okay.
Cody Campbell, former Texas Tech football player, turned multi-billionaire business mogul, right?
Yeah. Yes. So Cody played for Mike Leach, back in the mid 2000s, was an offensive lineman, starter, and all those things. And there was also a guy on that team named John Sellers, great guy. Mm-hmm. They were friends in college. I want to say they maybe were friends in high school too. But anyways, they played here and then went off and graduated and everything. And some years went by and they created a company called Double Eagle and got involved in the oil and gas business and in West Texas and the Metroplex and all these things. They were able to sell a version of their company, and they've done this now. They're on like version 3 or 4 of their company, and they keep selling it for like $1 billion like each time as they reinvent it and acquire when the price of oil is low, they buy, and it's just it's been pretty fascinating to watch. They are extremely passionate about Texas Tech, and if you've wondered about what's going on with like Texas Tech softball, okay, there was a big NIL deal with I think she's thought to be like the player of the year she was last year, Nigeri Kennedy, pitcher from Stanford. Well, John Sellers' wife, Cody's partner in this, John Sellers' wife played softball at Texas Tech, and she was very interested in the success of the softball program. So they invested, and it's worked. They won the Big 12, they won the conference tournament, they're in the NCAA tournament, all those things. But Cody is somebody that has, he's a regent here. He's the chairman of the board of regents here. He started the Matador Club, which is the collective here, which is, I think, one of the leaders in its space in the country on how to conduct these things. They make these kids do community service and all the stuff. Okay. But Cody is, and I think while you're asking about it, he's been named to this College Sports Commission or that President Trump is doing. And Cody he's played golf with Trump before, and they know each other. And it's pretty fascinating that Cody, And I find, because I've known the guy for so long, we text all the time. We'll talk on occasion. He's just got so much going. But what's fascinating is all these people starting to talk about him like they know him and they think they know what he's about and they've read what he's written. But Cody's main premise as far as college athletics right now is fighting. They think that he's trying to fight just for Texas Tech or maybe just the Big 12 or whatever your angle is. Like maybe we would assume that Nick Saban is only going to be worried about Alabama and the SEC, right?
Yeah.
And I think Cody is really fighting for the other guy. And right now, the other guy is everybody other than who's in the Big Ten and the SEC. Mm-hmm. He's talked about all the different broadcasting rights and wanting to try to rising tides and you guys will make more money than you're making now, even you really rich ones, if we do this right. And I don't know if anything will get done, but I'll tell you what, Jake, what I like about Cody's being a co-chair is that with anything going on, whether it's realignment, whether it's TV contracts, whether it's house settlement cases, whether it's whatever is going on, Cody will know exactly what is happening and be able to, help out Brett Yormark and the Big 12. You will have a seat at the table. You won't be surprised, but at least for the next 3.5 years while Trump's in office. Okay, for as long as this commission is in place, whether they do nothing, whether they try to do a lot, either way, you will be informed, and that hasn't always been the case on a league like the Big 12, is you've kind of been left in the dark. What are they doing? What are they plotting? No, you will have a seat at the table, and his main agenda is to fight for the other guy. And right now there's a lot of other guys out there, and he's trying to, again, make everybody more money. He's obviously really good at business. So that's my brief synopsis there and what I can offer up on Cody Campbell.
But here's the thing, that's what I like about this is I think BYU fans can get behind a guy like this because, as you mentioned, he played for Mike Leach, who obviously has a connection to BYU, having gone to BYU, so they have that connection. But he's been a player, so he's been in the position these athletes are in. He's also gone out in the real world and got real world experience and has made billions of dollars. So he has seen it from all angles, and I think his insight coming from both the football side of things as a student athlete. He's not been a coach like Saban. So Saban has the coaching element and maybe the college admin element that he can offer. But what Cody brings is the player side of it and also the real world business side of it. And I think that's exactly why, if you're an ACC fan, you're a G5 or G6 conference of whatever program you're a fan of, or you're somebody in the Big 12, this is exactly, in my opinion, the type of guy that you want to be there advocating for. Because as you mentioned, too often it's been shady backroom dealings between the network, speaking of Fox and ESPN, with the SEC and the Big Ten. And all of a sudden, like, hey, we're doing this. And everybody's like, whoa, hey, wait a minute. We didn't have a say in any of this. What's going on? And they're like, well, tough tiddlywinks, roll with it or don't. And I think a guy like Cody Campbell, he can step to the plate and say, here's the deal. Here's exactly what needs to happen, and understand that my background gives me a keen insight into how to operate this. And I think it's got far-reaching ramifications that obviously will benefit the Big 12, but I think it could have a very positive impact on the sports landscape, speaking of college sports as a whole.
Yeah, and we'll see what ultimately comes of this and who else is involved, and what they ultimately can get done. I just like the fact that there'll be lines of communication, because Cody is he's on a couple of committees as it relates to the Big 12. I think that, Kirby Hocutt, the athletic director here, and Cody have met with the folks that really kind of came up with the whole Project Rudy conversation, which was kind of regionalizing conferences again. That seems a bit far-fetched to me. Even trying to pool everybody's rights together and selling them off like the NFL does, which is, I think, what the ultimate dream of Cody's would be. I don't know if you can unwind a lot of the media contracts that are out there. Some of this will be far-fetched. I'm just pointing out that the lines of communication between what's going on at the top and at the White House and whatever with college athletics, the Big 12 will have a seat at the table, and they'll know exactly what's going on. They'll know how to prepare or how to vote or however you want to phrase all these things. And I think that's important. Again, if anything, and I don't know what will ultimately come of all this, but it's just been because he's a friend of mine, and I see him at most of the games, and it's pretty wild because that was reported like on a Thursday a couple of weeks ago, and I knew that on Tuesday he was at the White House. I didn't exactly know why, and then when I saw that there's this committee and that there was Nick Saban and this businessman, and I knew exactly. Texted him, I was like, "You son of a gun," and so I knew that's who he was, the businessman that was going to be also the co-chair that had a close tie to college athletics. Yeah, he sure does. Anyway, it's wild times that we are in now, but yeah, the Big 12 certainly is well represented.
Oh, awesome. Well, Cody, here's the thing, Cody, best of luck to you moving forward, because I'm speaking just from BYU side of things. We need somebody like this who can obviously be an advocate and help, as you mentioned, those lines of communication, but more importantly, I think stand up, as you mentioned, for the little guy, because there's a lot of big fish out there that want nothing more than to essentially get rid of everybody else and control what the future holds. And I think a guy like this can obviously make some inroads for the little guy out there. But Chris, it was a pleasure catching up with you as always. Where can everybody find your work if they want to learn more about Texas Tech from the BYU side of things?
Yeah, Locked On Texas Tech. I know Jake, I'll speak for him too. He does a phenomenal job on Locked On Cougars, and we're honored to be a part of this network, and we try to bring it every day. This is the time of year where we kind of talk about a variety of different things when we're out of season, but we both love what we do and appreciate you paying attention. And we both need to work on not being the little guy anymore, which is kind of what our whole episode was about to begin with, right?
Yeah, no doubt. use that money. They're talking the talk, but as I mentioned, you got to walk the walk now. Yep. And that's the big thing I think is going to come in the next couple of months as football season gets going. Chris, we'll do it again soon, hopefully.
Hey, sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right, that's Chris Level. I'm Jake Hatch. As always, thank you for making Locked On Texas Tech and Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, once again, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.